Hello and welcome to a Brothers Creed movie review, where we review movies and talk about them. I guess, right?
Yeah. So today we're going to be talking about the recent movie that came out, Creed 3. We're going to get into it. Jared and I are Rocky fans from a young age. And so although this isn't a Rocky movie, it's
No,
associated, right?
it is
It's
it.
associated
It
just
is.
because it has the Creed name. We're gonna get into it. We're gonna talk about it. We're gonna at the beginning here. We'll talk a little bit about our rankings as a non spoiler, and then we'll get into some spoilers. So it's gonna be a good conversation, and I'm sure we can learn some things and build our creed.
All right, let's jump in.
Yeah, I'm thinking I'm back.
Most valuable commodity I know of is information.
And that, my friends, is called integrity. That's called courage. Now that's the stuff leaders should be made of.
Either you're somebody or you're nobody.
You're not the devil. You're practice.
All right, so first thing, right off the top, Creed 3. So there's some tea about this movie. So apparently Stallone, Sylvester Stallone, obviously he's the original Rocky. When he did the original movies, like back in the '76, the producer of that was this guy named. Let me see. I'm trying to find his name here. I think it's Irwin is his name. And and Rocky or Sylvester Stallone sold this guy Irwin the rights to Rocky way back then in like 1976. And so actually Sylvester Stallone doesn't really own anything in regards to the Rocky franchise, any of the characters or anything. I think it's Irwin Winkler. So this Winkler guy, him and Michael B. Jordan decided to make this Creed 3. And Sylvester Stallone felt like he had a major falling out with this Winokur guy. Apparently, he said that the direction that this movie went in creatively wasn't the direction that he thought it should go in. And I was curious as to like, well, I wonder why.
Sylvester Stallone said that.
Yeah, I was like, I wonder why. He said that it was, I don't know, it was kind of weird. He said something like, oh, I think that the movie took on like a darker tone than I like, and I liked my hero to get beat up a little bit. This is what he said exactly, quote, "It was taken in a direction that is quite different than I would have taken it. It's a different philosophy. Irwin Winkler's and Michael B. Jordan's, their philosophy. I wish them well, but I'm more of a sentimentalist. I like my heroes getting beat up, but I just don't want them going into a dark space. I just feel people have enough darkness." So I don't feel like the movie went into a dark space, like he's talking about. But apparently he's been like trolling this guy for forever on Instagram, and he's just like, and at this point, like they have had a major falling out to where he's probably never going to play Rocky again. In fact, they were kind of in talks with Dolph Lundgren and the guy who plays Ivan Drago's son, who actually makes an appearance or two appearances in this Creed 3 movie, that they're going to do a Drago mini-series or a Drago series of movies or something like that. And apparently Stallone didn't know about that, so he was really mad. And then, so there's a lot of drama around this. But I thought that, reading that beforehand and hearing about that, like, oh man, it's going to really be a deviation from the Rocky franchise. But I didn't feel like went in a bad direction at all. I thought it wasn't dark. I didn't feel like it was dark at all either.
No, I think just you think of the character, and we don't want to give away too much, right? But I think the Rocky character is a very light-hearted character.
Yeah.
His character, I mean, they say a lot of jokes, and I mean, he's kind of funny and witty, and he's always got a positive attitude most of the time.
He's kind of a simpleton, though.
He's what?
A simpleton. Like,
yeah, he is. And this one, in this movie, Adonis, the main guy, he is really kind of tortured by his past. And I think that's kind of what he's talking about, how it's dark. I think that's really what he's probably saying, that
Yeah, it's just like a different take on like a boxing star, and like whereas like Rocky's was kind of like, just bludgeoned to death, and like I'm just gonna go out there and just get beat up and just absolutely, and that's the way that's his underdog approach. Whereas this movie was more like Adonis is more like smart, calculated. He's a businessman. He's got like this business franchise. He's not just like some idiot that lets Polly manage his finances,
And he loses
everything. So he's not an idiot. Like I would say that Rocky was an idiot, but he was an adorable idiot. But
yeah,
Adonis is not an idiot. He's a smart guy. He knows what he's doing, and he's also a boxer. So it's a different like approach, and he's not just going out there and getting punched in the head and getting brain damage for all 12 rounds. It's more of a calculated thing.
Calculated effort.
We'll talk more about that as we get into it. So let's do it.
Yeah.
So let's maybe do our quick rundown of our categories here, and we can give our overall reviews and then our one-liners for the movie, and then we'll jump into our spoilers portion.
Yeah, that sounds good. So breaking it down by categories, the categories that we look at are cinematography. Then we look at plot and story, and then we looked at acting and actors. Then we have an agenda category. Was there a political agenda with this movie? The last one is this movie creed building? Is there a creed building score? And then we will do an average of all of those different categories and what we think. So let's get into the first one. Obviously, we're just going to give high-level ratings here. If you want to hear what we specifically think about each one of these in a more spoiler format, then wait about 10 minutes.
Yeah. So first one, cinematography. What did you rank it out of 10?
So cinematography, I gave it a 7 out of 10.
Okay. I gave it an 8.
Okay.
I thought that was pretty good. What about plot, storyline?
Yeah, so plot and storyline. This one for me, I don't know if people are going to agree or not, but I actually give this one a 6.
Okay.
Yeah, without giving any kind of spoilers, this was probably one of my. Let's even just say out of the Creeds, right? This is Creed 3. Out of the 3 Creed movies, I felt like this one had the weakest plot.
Yeah.
Now, I'll get into some reasons why afterwards.
Okay. I gave it a 7. So,
Okay.
not too bad. And we can talk more about that. Acting and talent, I give mine an 8.
Yeah, I gave it an 8 too.
That was really well acted.
Yeah, I agree.
If you can't notice the actor, if you don't notice, when you don't notice that it's in your movie, that's how you know it's good acting, and it was really good.
It's like watching Brad Pitt when he acts, right? When Brad Pitt acts, it's or Leonardo DiCaprio, right? It's just like you wouldn't be able to tell they were acting, But if you watch some of these other like B-rated movies, it is obviously someone's trying to put on an act.
Yeah.
And didn't
I thought it was good.
Mm-hmm.
Agenda. What'd you feel like the agenda was?
So I put neutral. I didn't really feel like there was.
I put none.
Major agenda there.
Yeah, I put none. Unless nowadays stuff like that jumps out at me pretty quick. I do feel like there was one thing that kind of had a little bit of agenda that it was kind of inconsistent with the movie in like the past movies, but I'll talk about that later. But I don't think there was a left or right agenda. It was pretty pretty neutral.
I agree. For Creed building, I gave it a 7. for building your creed.
Yeah, I also gave it a 7. So overall, my score was a 7.5 out of 10.
All right, so mine was a 7 out of 10.
Nice. Hey, came in just in line.
So that's pretty good. I mean, out of the this is our third movie review that we've done, and that's the highest scores I think that we've given a movie.
Hey, I think it's the best one that we've seen so far. Out of a pale blue eye.
Yep, the glass onion.
The glass onion in this one. I think this is the
one.
best one. So what's your one sentence takeaway from the movie?
Yeah, so my let's call it a critic's quote.
Critic's quote.
Right? And try not to give away too much here, but my critic's quote is touching story about overcoming struggles, forgiving yourself and others, but with the punch.
Ooh, nice. Pun intended.
Yes.
I just said a well-filmed and exciting boxing movie with many life lessons to take away.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. This one was deep. I felt like it was, well, I mean, I guess all of them are kind of deep to a certain extent, but
this one was much more about, it wasn't just about the
good.
boxing. It was kind of like life lessons and a little bit more than just the boxing, but it was good. I think overall it was good. I would recommend going to see it.
I would definitely too. And one of the last things we say is this a movie that you have to see in the theater versus a movie that you can watch at home? I particularly,
I'd say,
I don't think you need a movie theater for this one. The music is really good, and so if you had a good sound system at home, that would make it a lot better. But I don't know if you particularly need to go to the movie theater to see it.
No, the fight scene isn't like movie theater level, like whoa, like, you know. So you don't need to see this in the movie theater. You could wait till it comes out.
It'd be okay watching it on your 65-inch at home.
Yeah, that'd be okay. All right, are we ready to jump into the spoilers portion now?
All right, so we're going to get into the spoilers. If you have not seen the movie yet and want to see it before you listen to the spoilers, then go do that and come back. If not, then enjoy the spoils.
Yeah, and let us know what you think. So, right off the top, let's talk about cinematography. So
Okay.
I thought the movie was like well filmed. I thought they did, like, visually it was pretty cool. I liked how they showed this like opulence of Adonis Creed's house with like the glass floors and all this kind of stuff, and then it shows the other guy like washing his socks in the sink of his dinky apartment, you know, and just how he's, well, really in this thing there's like, oh no, he's the underdog. I think the underdog thing was a little bit overplayed because it's like, oh, he's the underdog, he's just out of prison, and then it's like, no, Adonis is the underdog because his hands are all broken and he's, you know, an old retired guy, and so it's like, okay, so you can't have both underdogs here.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I have kind of two things to that. Well, and one of them, kind of what you were saying, goes into the plot a little bit too. But I had given it a 7 for cinematography. I thought there was really some cool perspectives, like perspective shots that were given.
Mm-hmm.
I really did like the during the final fight between Dame and Adonis.
Mm-hmm.
They started it, and it was like your normal. There was thousands and tens of thousands of people in the crowd screaming, all that kind of stuff. But I think like in the second round, they ended up like they took all the people away, and it was just those two in the ring fighting each other,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just them, and everything else was almost quiet, right, except for just the music, and they were fighting each other, and they had some implements come up where it was like a jail cell at one point, and a couple different things, and I just liked how it kind of, everything else, kind of all the distractions went away, and it was all about these two overcoming their struggles.
Yeah, I like that part too, but I actually didn't like the jail cell thing, and then like the mattress on one of the corners. I didn't like that. I thought it was kind of cheesy. I I thought it was cool how everybody else faded away. And also before that, when they were actually like, it was like the camera was in the ring and you could see these guys fighting and you could see the audience. You could see people that were ringside. I thought that was really cool. And that's not something you usually see from the other Rocky movies. The other Rocky movies, it was like it seemed like it was just too high budget to have people in the audience. So they just kind of filmed very tight shots within the ring. Whereas this one, you could kind of see outside the ring, and that was really cool. So I thought that was pretty neat. Yeah. What do you think about the training montage?
So I think so let's get into plot a little bit, right? For me, I gave the plot a 6. I felt like the plot was a little weak. And here's why. So this guy who is, I would say Adonis is probably what, 30 in this movie, or supposed to be in his 30s.
Yeah, something like that.
Right? And this guy is probably I don't know, 8 years older than him.
Yeah, something like that. I mean,
right. So this guy who's in his probably
40s.
mid 40s, early to mid 40s, has been in jail for the past 20 years.
Yeah.
Right. 18 years. And then he comes out of jail and in a matter of 2 weeks, or a month, he comes and he beats
Felix,
the heavyweight champion of the world.
Yeah.
With ease. I mean, he didn't even have like a bruise on his face coming out of that fight, and the heavyweight champ almost died.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, even Rocky, right? Who in the first Rocky movie, he was a nobody that got to go against the champ, and the only reason, and he lost, number one, against Apollo in the first movie.
It was a split decision,
but he went the distance, right?
Yeah. It was all about going the distance, not about killing the other guy.
Yeah, he got demolished. I mean, he got brutalized. But this guy just like comes out. I mean, I don't care if he was the Golden Gloves winner,
in 1994.
20 years ago.
Yeah.
I don't know. So that seemed a little weak to me. I mean, he could have at least struggled a little bit more. I don't know. But they had to make him like a really strong character. They had to make him kind of like a Mr. T type character that just came in and just whooped the champ.
Yeah.
Like when Mr. T comes in and takes the title from Rocky, he just whoops him in like 2 rounds, knocks him out.
Yeah.
And so that was a little weak. I felt that the training montage before the last fight, I don't know, maybe it's because Sylvester Stallone wasn't involved, but it seemed more of like, I don't know, it seemed more of like people just like getting sweaty than it did like actual like progression and movement. And I'm thinking like Rocky 4 where he's struggling and he's like can barely keep himself upright and he can't do the weight, and then he gets stronger and stronger and stronger, and then you can see him progressing, and it's just like, oh yeah, and then he's running up this hill and he's fighting and he's working harder than Drago or whatever. But this one was like, oh, he's pulling a little Cessna airplane with a harness on downhill, like, oh cool, or on like a flat surface. So yeah, I don't know.
I thought it was cool though when the Dame was climbing those ropes. He had like 2 ropes hanging, and he was like climbing them, just like inching up them with each hand.
Yeah, Dame was doing like the Rocky in the Wilderness training.
Oh yeah, he was doing the poor man's training. Yeah. Whereas like Adonis was doing like the rich man's, like pulling a Cessna.
Yeah,
like a.
An airport hangar.
Well, one of the cool things about the training was when they brought Ivan Drago's son back in.
Yeah.
And he was sparring with him. And that dude is a giant. He was huge, man. He was sparring with him, and I was like, oh my gosh, man.
Yeah. That's why I gave the actors and acting.
Yeah.
I gave that an 8.
Yeah.
Because I liked how they brought in Drago a couple times. And I mean, on top of what we already talked about, how the acting was just really good, I think the actors were just they just like, I don't know, you would never have been able to tell they were acting. The acting was just very high quality. But I like how they brought Drago in, and I did like that scene during the training montage. It was right before the training montage where he was fighting Drago, and Drago was just like freaking whooping him.
Yeah.
I mean, he was just whooping
He's
him.
like, maybe we need to take a break.
Yeah. Well, no. I think Drago even said, well, he was like, maybe we shouldn't do this.
Yeah.
And talking about like maybe Adonis shouldn't take the fight. And so they were kind of like friends a little bit.
Yeah, they are friends.
Like.
Yeah. Yeah, they were, because when Drago came to that party, Adonis went over and shook his hand. I was like, hey man, how's it going? So it looks like they had become friends.
Yeah, for sure. And so, I did like that part, how they brought him in and
that was cool.
Kind of implemented that a little bit.
One thing that I thought was interesting is that, well, one thing that this kind of goes along with cinematography, but like at the end of every single Rocky fight, like literally their faces so swollen that like their eyes are like you can barely see out of their eyes. I mean, heck, they had to cut Rocky's eye in one of them so he could even see. But like at the end of the fight, at the big fight, at the end of the 12 rounds, they're barely even swollen. Their faces are barely even swollen at all. And then after the fight, he goes and he's playing with his daughter in the ring. I'm like, dude, after the fight, these guys go to the hospital, not playing around in the ring with their kids, This is not like the NFL.
Yeah.
He stayed around and played on the field.
Especially going full 12 rounds, they went like the whole time.
Hard.
And they were just
and he almost killed the heavyweight champion,
yeah,
before, and getting slammed on this whole time with all these 20 years of rage built up, and he doesn't even have barely any bruises on his face.
Yeah. So it was interesting. I mean, it was definitely entertaining. And I wouldn't let any of this deter you from going to see it.
Yeah.
One thing definitely
with the storyline that I liked was, in the Rocky series, we hear about that one line where he says, "It's not about how hard you can hit; it's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward." So you can take that as a life lesson, but it's also kind of Rocky's mantra. It's just like he's just going to get punched in the head as many times so he can go the distance. Whereas Adonis in the movie, he says, it's not about how hard you can hit, it's about control and focus. So I like that because it's and I spoke earlier about how Adonis seemed to be more intelligent than the simpleton of Rocky Balboa. So it's more of an intellectual approach to boxing as opposed to just, just this juggernaut type of mentality that Rocky Balboa had. It's more of like a dance. You're doing a dance. That's why he talks to Felix, the one champ that was working in his gym. He's like, it's not about just overpowering and destroying, and it's about feeling it and doing the dance and actually controlling your power. So I like that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's definitely an interesting comparison. And I think, too, it's important because they wanted to potentially separate from the Rocky movies a little bit and kind of create something of their own, which I agree with. I mean, I think that's fine.
Yeah, I agree, too. I think that one thing about the acting, going on to the acting, and this is also kind of with the storyline as well, is that I think that the way that the masculinity is shown in this movie is a little bit more, and I hate to use this word but I would say it's a little bit more modern than the Rocky franchise. Like in the Rocky franchise, he basically ignores his kid. You never see Rocky doing anything other than just driving in his Ferrari and just brooding. There's very little emotion, or when he does get emotional, he gets angry. But in this movie, right at the beginning, first scene in the movie, he's having a tea party with his daughter. There's a lot of interaction between him and his daughter, who's deaf, in the movie. There's multiple occasions where he's dealing with very painful emotions, especially with this Dame character that they've had this history. And he cries. He cries at the end when he's dealing with this pain, this reconciliation. He's very emotional when he's talking to his wife about the struggle and this weight that he's carrying. You don't see that kind of emotion in any of the Rocky movies. And so I thought that was very interesting. This is like a little bit of but I mean, still, he's very masculine. I mean, he dressed super sharp the whole movie. I mean, he's freaking jacked. He's strong. He goes out there and he fights him. And even he he shows his daughter how to box in the movie. And even his wife and him are kind of going back and forth like, well, you can talk it out. And then sometimes you got to fight it out. And like, that's kind of what he did. You know, he fought it out. He had to fight him. And so I don't think it was like, you know, masculine, like modern masculinity sometimes is just like wimping people out. But I think it just is like opens up a little bit more of the emotional side of men in this movie than traditionally we would see in the Rocky movies.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I thought it was interesting that kind of the whole plot of Adonis and Dame were together, and Adonis started to fight, and then Dame pulled a gun, and then he got put in jail on gun charges for 20 years almost because he pulled the gun really to kind of save Adonis. But did he really save him? Did he really need to pull the gun? Like, you know, it's kind of all questionable. But however, that's kind of the one thing I want to talk about too with the plot is that the whole thing is that this is like Adonis's struggle in life is coping with the feelings of guilt. Not only that this guy went to prison, where he feels kind of that he went to prison for him, which he didn't really go to prison for him. Or maybe he went to prison for protecting him, but he's the one that chose to pull the gun. I mean,
yeah.
And so he's been tormented and struggled with this his entire life. He's kind of been running from it. He doesn't want to talk to his wife about it. And I actually, whenever they were like, who is this Leroy guy or Lenny or whatever his name was, who was like the foster dad or the home dad that would beat on these kids, I thought it was going to be like he like molested them or something like that, and he didn't want to talk about it. I thought that's where it was going with the story, but he was just a terrible guy and just kind of beat on him.
Maybe they originally were going to take it in that direction, but it was maybe it was too dark, and so they just said, "Oh, he beat on us" or whatever, as opposed to saying, "Oh,
I felt like they were kind of setting it up for that, like he was almost embarrassed of what happened, and just get past it, and it was like,
exactly. But then he was just like, "Oh, he just beat on us." I'm like, "Oh, why would you be so embarrassed about that?" Whereas if he had said, he did things to us, and it's like, oh, that is serious, and I can understand why you would do that. It lightens it up a little bit because that would make it like super serious,
Yeah, but that would have almost made more sense of like
it would have made more sense because the reason why he was so reluctant to talk about it.
Yeah. I mean, I think it would have added an element to the story.
Yeah, because he was like super reluctant to talk about it. But like he's a fighter. I mean, he gets beat up all the time. To say I got beat up by a foster dad as a kid, I don't know. I don't understand why that's not like so outside the realm of like, don't even talk to your wife about it. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and his wife didn't know the guy was talking about, oh, when we were in the home, do you remember the bed bugs? And his wife was like, what? Like she was so surprised. Like, I mean, had they not talked about this before? I mean, they've been married for 10 plus years. Their daughter's 10 years old.
Apparently not, man. Like, apparently they didn't communicate very well at all.
They never talked about like, where did you come from? They never talked about, oh yeah, I was an illegitimate child of Apollo Creed, and Apollo Creed's wife came to the orphanage or to the child home and picked me up and at 12 years old and raised me. I mean, she didn't think there was a whole life before 12 years old.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I thought that was a little bit of a lapse, but one thing that I really did like, and I guess this kind of goes into plot and cinematography a little bit too, is in the ending in the last fight when everything's kind of going quiet and it's before the last round, and they're both in their corners, and they look over at the other corner as boxers, as adults,
mm-hmm.
and they see each other as they were as children.
Yeah.
And what I got from that was they were like seeing their friendship. They were seeing each other as little kids, as best friends, as what they used to be, the innocence that existed between them. And I felt like kind of at that point, obviously they both still wanted to win the fight, but that felt to me like a turning point of like forgiveness, I guess, or just like overcoming what they had been through.
Yeah. Interesting. Let's go move on to agenda. I didn't feel like there was any agenda. I thought it was the one thing that I thought was kind of weird though is I think because it was cool they have his daughter was deaf. I'm not against having people with disabilities in the movies, but it was kind of weird because in the first movie his wife had said that she was going deaf and that she would be deaf, like almost like immediately, like imminently. She was imminently going to be deaf.
She was losing her hearing.
Yeah. And she's like, I got to get it in now. And but then like in the movie, she was totally fine. It was almost like they would sign sometimes, but then other times, like it was almost like they realized that they couldn't carry the movie well and the dialogue well through signing with him and his wife. So they just had her speak normal. And it was like, oh, it's like convenient.
They didn't even mention anything about her hearing.
Well, yeah, they did. She said, "Oh, I can't do concerts anymore."
Well, I guess that's true, yeah, because it would damage her hearing.
But I didn't understand. It's like she couldn't sing, but
she could be at the.
But she could be there at the concert. Like, yeah, she's like, "Oh, I'm here listening to my song be played." He's like, "I bet you wish you could be up there singing." And it's like, "Oh yeah, I do miss it." And it's like, but you were literally like 5 feet away. Like, what was the difference between you being there and not staying on the stage? So that was kind of a weird thing. I feel like they kind of painted themselves into a corner with that whole deaf thing. And so they wanted to keep the thing going, but for the dialogue, it wouldn't work right. So that's where they brought in the daughter. They could keep it going there. And then they just kind of conveniently forget or make up some weird kind of story excuse as to why his wife could still hear, but for the dialogue purposes.
Yeah. I mean, that's a minuscule thing, but yeah, I agree. It's interesting.
Well, I bring it up because that was the part that was kind of distracting. I'm like, what is going on here? Like, why are they doing this? And like, this doesn't flow right. So because it stood out in my mind, that's why I bring it up. But other than that, there was no thing. So Creed building, I thought there was a lot of different themes in here that are great, like lessons and themes to build your Creed. Just a couple of the ones I thought of. Like, I liked it when they were both studying their opponents. I thought it was cool when, at the beginning, actually Dame had showed Adonis, watch for the weakness, be patient, and then when Dame was fighting Felix, he goes to sit in the corner, and he had been punching his arm, under his arm, and then he actually tells this guy that in the corner to move over, and he looks over and he sees that they're icing Felix's arm, and so he's like, nice. And then he just keeps punching that arm, similar to how Adonis won by punching the guy right in the kidney because he kept exposing himself. So I like that aspect of like studying your opponent, finding out their weaknesses. Also, leaders can lead in a variety of ways. Him and his wife, are going back and forth about, stand up for yourself, fight. And then she was like, well, you can talk about it. And really kind of both of those ended up working. Another one is don't let guilt push you into making certain decisions. He made the decisions he did because of the guilt that he had, and that's not necessarily a good way to operate. Also, don't get hung up on the past. Like, sometimes I guess a couple things. One, you can't just bury your past and just move forward. Sometimes these things will come back. So deal with those things, but also don't just keep letting it keep you bogged down. And that's kind of what he felt so much guilt and shame from the past that it just really prevented him from moving forward and even caused a rift between him and his wife and all this kind of stuff. And the last one, I think that was just good, is like I mentioned earlier about just being more tactical, being in control, having focus, that kind of thing. I like that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think we'd both put a 7 on this one.
Yeah.
I had written down just overcoming your past, and the struggle. I think that he potentially could have done that sooner. If he was really plagued by this during his life, then as an adult, he should have, reached out or done something. But I think one thing is kind of forgiveness of others and forgiveness of yourself, right? He felt his whole life that this is like my fault. But his wife and even his coach, who knew Dame he knew what happened, right? He knew Dame from little as well. He was like, it is not your fault. Like, you didn't make him pull the gun, right? That was his decision. It was his fault. And so sometimes it's almost like survivor's guilt, right? You have survivor's guilt in war. And, these guys, it's like, I could have done this or I could have done that. Well, you can't just live on wouldas and couldas. So really just kind of forgiving yourself and sharing. And I liked what you said about kind of that masculine, kind of a modern masculine of being involved with the family and with his daughter. I thought that was really cool. And I think another thing too is that he should have talked about it.
Yeah.
When his wife was like, tell me, please tell me about it. Tell me about it. Like, he should have just talked to her. And this is the kind of what I think would have completely flipped this plot completely upside down. Right. Do you know how right when Adonis was going to take this fight, when he was going to get the heavyweight belt back, he went on that the news station or the sports station or whatever it was.
Yeah. I was wondering like what the deal was with that. Like I didn't get that part. It's like he went on the news and they're like, Adonis is now on the news and he has something to say. And
I think he was just going to announce that I'm going to fight.
Well,
right?
Well, no. Well, I don't think so because he didn't say anything until the guy called him and challenged him. And he said, "Let's do it." No,
I felt like he had made up his mind because his wife told him sometimes you just have to fight.
Yeah.
So I think he had already made up his mind. But what he should have done, from my 50,000 foot view, is on that radio or on the TV. He should have told the story.
That's what I was thinking too.
He should have said, I was 12 years old. Adonis or Dame was 18. I got in a fight with someone who used to beat me as a child as a foster parent.
Yeah.
And I saw him and my rage got a hold of me and I started punching him. And then his boys came up to me and started beating on me. And Dame came over to help, but he pulled a gun. And he already had charges, and he went to jail for 18 years, and he's pissed at me because he thinks that he went to jail, that I sent him to jail because he pulled the gun protecting me. I mean, if he would have said something like that, it would have completely taken the wind out of Dame's sails because it was like Dame is being mean to him, and he's like, but nobody knows why, all this sort of kind of stuff. Well, if people knew the story, they'd be like, dude, that was a dick move. Like, that's not his fault that you pulled a gun. Yeah. I mean, like,
I agree. I thought that's what he was going to say. When he went on, I thought he was going on to say, here's the story. This is what's going on between me and Dame. This is why he keeps trashing me. I also thought it was weird how like Dame was like trashing his family, his personal family. And then like it was like at the end it was like, oh, all cool, It's like, well, maybe he was just talking about the Creed name or like even if he did talk about his dad or whatever, it's like, why is he trashing?
Your dad would be disappointed in you.
Like he was making like really personal attacks against him. I don't know. It seemed weird at the end. They were just like, oh, reconcile. Like, hey, no worries about you saying all this stuff about my wife and my kid. It's like, what?
Yeah.
But yeah, I totally agree with you. I wish he had said something like, hey, let's put this behind us. And if the way that we have to put this behind us is a fight, then let's do it, kind of a thing.
Yeah. It would have given him the power versus it felt like the whole movie, Dame is the one that had the power because he knew this secret that, that only Adonis knew, that he was the reason why he was in jail or whatever. I mean, it's not like they're going to arrest Adonis for something that happened 20 years ago. It's just like, that would have taken the wind out of his sails, and it would have maybe even sold more tickets because it would have been, even bigger of a, rivalry or grudge. You could have sold it as a grudge match, like, but
also when that guy at the party broke Drago's hand, that was a dead giveaway, man. I was like, oh, dude, that's a plant. Because I thought actually, well, I had kind of hoped that Dame would would knock out Felix or hurt him in sparring, and then he would fight Drago. That's what I was hoping for.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
But
he couldn't handle Drago.
He couldn't tango with Drago, dude. Drago would have just punched his heart out of his chest.
Yeah,
but Felix, dude, little hombrecito there, man. What weight class is he in, by the way? I mean, these weight classes.
He was a heavyweight, I guess. I don't know. Maybe
the guy was
really
small, man. He was tiny. Yeah. So
yeah, but
anything else?
Overall, I thought it was a good movie. I know maybe we're being overly critical in a couple different aspects, but I'm just a Rocky fan through and through, and so I have to compare it. I have to.
No, I totally agree. 7.5 was definitely a good score. I think it was. I mean, with a boxing movie, you kind of know what the plot's going to be coming in, right? There's not going to be no surprises, and so it's not like the storyline is going to be so exciting or anything like that. But the cinematography was great, the acting was great. It was over. The lessons learned were pretty good. So where it was weakest is probably in the plot line and story. I was between 6.5 and 7, but I was just between them two. But yeah. That's what you get when you walk into a boxing movie. There's going to be a boxing match, and the hero's going to win. Period. So
yeah. All right. Well, hopefully you guys enjoyed this movie review. If you saw the movie, leave a comment and tell us what your thoughts were. If we were on par, or if maybe you thought it was better or possibly worse than what we thought. We'd be interested in how did this movie help build your creed?
Yeah.
Was it a creed builder, or was it a creed destroyer? Pun intended, because it's Creed 3.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Thanks all. Let's build that creed together.
All right, let's do it.